Rofhiwa Madzena, good afternoon to you at the business desk. The Department of Economic Development has now weighed in on the new Wto Director General. You've got the Minister with you.
That's right, Jeremy. So the World Trade Organization, as you've mentioned, has chosen the first woman and first African in its history to lead it. Nigerian economist Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala will be taking over as Director General. So what does this mean for South Africa's trade opportunities? Also, what will the trade relationship between South Africa and the US look like in a COVID-19 world? Joining me now to discuss this further is Minister Ebrahim Patel, and he is the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Minister, many thanks for your time this afternoon. Now, you have congratulated the new Director General, but what do you think this will yield in terms of better trade relations for South Africa?
Well, good afternoon to you and to all the viewers. Of course, this is it's an historic appointment. It's the first African, it's the first woman to lead the World Trade Organization, and that organization is at the crossroads. Global trade has expanded rapidly over the last 2 decades, 3 decades, but some big questions are being asked now. While the World Trade Organization has facilitated a rise in the quantity of trade of goods and services, the impact of that trade, the distributional effects of that trade, if you like, the quality of trade is hotly disputed. So there are countries like South Africa who say there's not enough policy space to pursue a strong and active industrialization path. There are countries like the United States who say that the World Trade Organization has ceded too much power to newly industrialized economies. And so these debates, these discussions, China, which has utilized the space in the WTO very effectively, I think what's really the challenge that Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, our new Director General, will face is how to navigate this. And what makes it so complex is the World Trade Organization is a consensus-based organization. So it's not simply majority vote, and it's not simply the fiat or dictate from the head of the organization. So her job would be to try to build a new consensus. And South Africa and the African continent is going to come in on that discussion and say that that has to be on the basis of enabling the poorest, the most vulnerable societies and economies to find space, to find traction in global trade. And if you recall, it's come at a potentially fortuitous time for our continent. We've just implemented the new African Continental Free Trade Area, in which eventually we hope we can get 55 African countries to begin to trade with each other on preferential terms, build up our industrial base, and then be able to move much more actively in building trade relations with the rest of the world as an African bloc.
Minister, you have spoken about the complexities that she walks into as a Director General, and I just want to get a sense from you, because it lost so much relevance during the Trump era, the World Trade Organization, how does she even begin to start fixing all the complexities and the challenges that come with the organization, and the kind of support that she would need to be getting?
Well, turning to your last issue, I think she's going to need an enormous amount of support, a lot of luck, and a tremendous skill in navigating all the complex constituents that together make up the World Trade Organization. I would venture 3 immediate priorities. The first is to deal with the impact of COVID on the global trading system. We now find with vaccine access that these have come down to a big question around vaccine distribution, the hoarding by some countries, what has been described by some as vaccine nationalism. And so we need a new deal on that. Secondly, institutional reform, enabling the World Trade Organization to operate more effectively. Its appellate body is currently not functioning. It's getting all of those up and running again. And the third challenge is to build a new consensus on development objectives. A number of years ago, countries got together in Doha and agreed to an ambitious platform, but that's not been implemented. So she will have a ready-made set of ideas. It's going to take the tricky and difficult task of forging consensus. And of course, with the new administration in the United States now, hopefully she would have somewhat more of a receptive ear.
Yeah.
But
Minister, we're running out of time. I'm sorry to interrupt you as you talk, but I must ask you this one final question. You are meeting with the Americans next month, or your department is, to discuss future relations, and they, of course, want an updated trade deal. And I do understand that you'd basically like things to remain as stable as possible. So what exactly will you be telling them?
But I think what we're looking for long term is developing the African continental free trade as our immediate area, and then engaging as an African bloc with major trading partners like the United States, China, and the European Union. They remain important sources of investment as well as markets for our exports. And so we need to have a constructive and mutually beneficial engagement with them. We have the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, and one of the issues we will be talking to the United States about is the continuation of AGOA. They're thinking about the future on AGOA. And in those discussions, I think what we're going to be bringing back is the enormous damage that is being caused by the pandemic, and the way in which a set of trade deals can strengthen the economies of the most vulnerable parts of the world, many countries on the African continent. That would be some of the issues that we would be raising with the United States. Of course, every discussion is two-way, so we'd also want to hear their concerns as we hear the concerns of other important trading blocs.
Many thanks for your time. That is Minister Ebrahim Patel.